Hi, I'm Gabe.
I'm Jaime.
I'm Vashitta.
So what do you think about Trump and Putin?
They're BFFs, right?
Right. I mean,
Scarily, freakily.
scarily, is that a word?
It is now. Terrifyingly.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of Republican members calling it treason now. A lot of them seem to be upset, but I don't see any action being taken.
Right. That's the crux of it, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't understand.
And so many of them backtracked straight off of it when he said, "Oh, I didn't mean to say would.
Right.
I meant wouldn't." Even freaking Rob Portman said that he takes the president at his word. This president, you take at his word? Like, this man is the probably the least likely person I would take at his word.
Exactly.
Like, Trump himself will change what those words are in 15 minutes.
Exactly. Yes. He will say one thing and literally turn around and say the other while on the same interview or whatever. So yeah. But
yeah, nothing's gonna happen.
Exactly. As we can see, this has been what word am I looking for? This has been a repeated thing, a pattern for the Trump administration, is that this man can do whatever and no actions are taken.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I was watching all of this and I kind of just suddenly flashed back to just a very short time ago when we were having this massive national discussion about guns and assault weapons and school shootings. And then all of a sudden it was about kids in detention camps. And now we're looking at Trump and Putin and the ability to take a massive national narrative, not just, whatever the little thing that you're talking about, in the White House press room, but what everybody's discussing and just turn it right around, and suddenly we as a country have forgotten what it was 15 minutes ago we were angry about. Terrifying.
Exactly. It's sad though. I shouldn't really laugh. It's sad.
Yeah. Colbert actually talked about that last night. He was like, "Shoot, finally got that all cleared up. We can go back to talking about things like, kids in cages." Like this other thing still hasn't, been fixed over here yet. But I think the other piece of the whole thing that really gets me is that so even if, and this is a huge if, and I'm not saying I believe this, you take Trump at his word that he misspoke and should have said wouldn't instead of would. The other, whatever it was, 5,000 words in the statement he made that day were also equally stupid and ridiculous.
Yes.
He agreed. He said that Putin presented a great plan on how we were going to let Americans get interrogated by KGB agents because they might let Americans sit in on a KGB interrogation of another Russian person. You're going to take an American citizen to
a former U.S. ambassador.
Yeah, to Russia to let the KGB interrogate. Are you out of your ever-loving mind?
Benghazi what?
Right.
Seriously. You were so lucky, Gabe, that you haven't had to bleep out 14 words in this first 3 minutes of the podcast. Let me just tell you how much control I'm using right now.
I just pulled up Jim Renace's Twitter feed, and he used to have his profile picture be him and Trump standing behind the desk in the Oval Office. And now it's just Jim Renace and not Donald Trump anymore.
That'll show him, right?
That's interesting, because I'm going to guess that most of the people Jim Renace wants to vote for him probably still very much love Donald Trump.
Yeah, but I think they're all probably doing a little bit of soul searching when the president stands up there and basically, craps all over the FBI and the CIA in front of the head of Russia. What?
Yeah. Except Bob Portman, who's going to take him at his word. It's all better.
The fun part, if there was part of Trump heading over there, was, did you see the Queen's brooches? Have you seen that?
I saw the article about this. Have you seen it?
I don't think.
Oh, it's great. Okay, so and people haven't been that they've kind of understood this was a thing because Madeleine Albright put out a book called Read My Pins, where she explains that her brooches throughout the time when she was Secretary of State told a message. So people have kind of understood that this is a thing that, women of society or whatever do.
Older ladies.
So when Trump landed in the UK, the Queen at the event that she was at, the brooch that she had on was the brooch given to her by the Obamas, like as a personal gift. So Trump's here, I'm putting on my Obama brooch. So that was the first of 3. Day 2, she's got this giant snowflake that was given to her by the people of Canada. So Trump's been attacking Canada. She's like, no, I got my Canadian snowflake.
And it's a snowflake too. And of course, they all call the liberals all the liberal snowflakes. So that imagery is an interesting one too.
Right. And then the day 3, this was the day that everybody saw the pictures because you're not supposed to turn your back on the Queen.
Yeah, I did see that one.
Many people said, hey, we don't care that she's the Queen. She is, however, a 92-year-old woman, and you're going for a walk, so maybe just some common personal courtesy would be in order.
It doesn't exist.
So people took a look at that picture, and they realized, first off, that the dress she was wearing was the dress that she wore the day after the Brexit vote came through. And she had kind of quietly opposed the Brexit vote and showed up to Parliament with the hat that looked like the European Union flag to like show solidarity with Europe. So she's wearing that same dress. And then the brooch that she wore on that day to like actually meet with Trump. People looked back through the file photos and realized that that's the same brooch that the Queen's mother wore to the state funeral for the Queen's father after he died. Oh, wow. So like, this is this really dark, just like somebody
First
died.
Of all, how are people even able to like put these things together? Who
has that much time on their hands?
Exactly. I mean, thank you, but like,
I appreciate it, but
and did Trump, was he smart enough to catch on? Did somebody have to tell him?
No, I don't think he would know and or care. But then a bunch of news sites somebody outlined this like really brilliantly in some tweets and showed, and the Queen had her secret message, because the Queen's not supposed to make political statements, but it's like, no, you're coming. I'm wearing my Obama brooch.
Major shade.
Oh yeah, major shade. So,
which I appreciate out of a 92-year-old woman for sure. Yeah,
it was cool. And then Trump with his treasonous comments in Helsinki later that week was just absolutely appalling. Yes,
we crapped all over NATO, and then we went and became BFFs with Putin.
Right.
And the story is going to continue.
Yeah.
Did you see that? Did you see that story from yesterday?
I don't
so,
think so.
Andrea Mitchell,
yes,
was interviewing the director of national intelligence or something. Like, you remember his exact title? I'm going to forget his name too.
I think it's director of national intelligence, DNI.
Yeah,
Dan Coates.
Dan Coates. She was like live interviewing him before this audience at a international security conference somewhere, when the tweet came out from the White House that the president had invited Putin to the White House this fall. So Andrea Mitchell is on stage, and so she interrupts Dan Coates with "I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we've got some breaking news." And she's like, "The White House just tweeted." And if you watch the video, you actually have to watch. We'll put it in the show notes. You have to watch the video, not just listen to the audio, because if you watch the video, you can see Dan Coates, his face when she said, "We just got a tweet from the White House." His face is like, "Whoa, right, crap, what's coming at me?" And then she reads it that they have extended an invitation to Putin to come to Washington D.C. this fall. And he basically did say, "What now?" Yeah. And Andrea starts to, repeat herself. He's like, "Yeah, so I guess I heard that right." And she's like, "So you have a comment?" He's like, "Oh boy."
Trump's people
I have
are
to
pissed.
see it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was it's one of the most amazingly new classic moments of the Trump administration, which, is a long list because he's constantly giving us material. But yeah, there's the look on it. I mean, and this is Donald Trump's national director of intelligence, and he's the one going, "Oh crap, what did the president do again?"
Right.
So yeah, so I guess this will be a story that keeps on giving, because this fall we're gonna have Putin come to Washington D.C.
Well, I guess if locking children in cages wasn't enough to get the American people mad, I guess that is, because they love this country so much.
You would hope.
Donald Trump committing treason and doing all these other incredibly egregious things, would make them even more upset. I don't know.
But the thing is, what I'm seeing is people like bending over backwards to talk about how this isn't treason. I'm
exactly.
Like, how exactly do you do? I love America so much that I want our president to give it away to Russia. Like, is really
I have
what these
this
people are saying
on my porch, just hanging up. But hey, it's okay.
It's all good.
It's the president. It's Donald Trump. How is he doing this?
It really is the literal representation of his, like, I could walk down Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and people would still vote. Yeah.
I'm just confused.
Right. Yeah. Well, the question is, has he actually committed treason? Has he provided state secrets to Putin or Putin's people when he had the ambassador in the Oval Office, when he had a secret meeting?
Yeah, like we'll never know that because he had a secret meeting.
Right. So has he actually committed treason? And then are the government officials who would have the ability to rein him in, do they believe whether or not the president is above the law? And unfortunately, the members of the U.S. House have not shown a commitment to try and provide the proper oversight over the president. And what's terrifying is the latest Supreme Court nominee, Brett Kavanaugh, clearly has shown through his record that he does not believe that the president can be reined in. He believes that the president is above the law.
Absolutely.
Which is terrifying.
Extremely.
Yeah, I mean, for as much as we talk about how, like, Trump picked this guy because he's so bad on Roe, like, Trump really picked this guy because he's so bad on Roe and believes that the president can't be prosecuted
all
for
of
anything.
Their beliefs line up perfectly.
Right. Yeah, I mean, what more do you need? If you're a president looking at being prosecuted, you're going to put a judge on the Supreme Court who believes that for a lifetime, by the way, not just for Trump's, rest of however long Trump's presidency will be, or however long Trump exists, because I guess some polling somebody saw somewhere like a big chunk of people believe that it's the lifetime of the president that the judge gets to serve. I don't know, but no.
I think some people think that it's a nomination and he would be on the court as long as Trump is in office, and that's not. It's as long as Brett Kavanaugh would be alive.
Yes.
It's a lifetime appointment for him for his lifetime. And we'd have to put up with him.
And amazingly, knock on some really solid wood, it also seems to raise your lifespan because the vast majority of Supreme Court justices live a really long time.
Right. So this could be a 40-year appointment.
Yeah. I mean, he's in his early 50s. Yes.
Scary.
Yeah. This guy, I mean, changing the court for that long, not just.
Right.
But yeah, so Kavanaugh doesn't think that people deserve rights, and he believes the president is above the law.
Right.
And he wants, as we talked about with Elena last week, he wants, religious freedom, but really that religious control, like pushing other people's religion on you, is not religious freedom. So
exactly.
Yeah, it just really proves why Kavanaugh should not be considered for his nomination until after this election, and after we figured out did Trump actually collude with Russia? Is he actually guilty of crimes?
Was this nominee selected by Putin himself?
Yeah.
We honestly don't know.
Who knows?
That is a really good question.
We did. Oh, the other part of the Trump-Putin press conference thing that was really, really interesting was that because Trump's always said that Putin didn't prefer him. Like, he meddled in the election, but it wasn't in a way to like instill one person or another. It was just to create a chaos in the election system. But like, so one of the reporters actually asked Putin in that press conference whether he preferred Trump over Hillary, and he actually admitted in that press conference that yes, he very much preferred Trump over Hillary. So Putin himself has said that he did that to get Trump elected.
He prepaid for the presidency. He might as well get what he purchased.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
So now Kavanaugh is in there, and yeah, I mean, who knows? Putin may have picked himself.
Yeah, so it's a lifetime appointment. It's an incredibly important decision. Something that people have pointed out was, first off, the Merrick Garland debacle proved that the U.S. Senate is capable of waiting until after an election before they make this choice.
Yes,
absolutely. So they should. They did it before. They can do it again.
It was fewer days before too. So.
Right. They also established, at the urging of Mitch McConnell, when Elena Kagan was the nominee to the U.S. Supreme Court, he demanded that the Senate take the time to review essentially everything she'd ever written anywhere. And that took an incredibly long time. So McConnell delayed the Kagan nomination to review documents. And so Democrats in the Senate, and I believe Sherrod Brown's one of the ones calling for this, saying, hey, we did it before, we can do it again. A lifetime appointment picked by Donald Trump. We're going to stop and review everything Brett Kavanaugh has ever written before we have this discussion.
Yes.
So that's an important move that will give them just an appropriate amount of time to really make sure that this guy's worthy of a lifetime appointment.
I mean, he's going to be on the court for a lifetime. Take another couple of weeks.
Right.
I mean, I feel really sorry for the poor staffer who's going to have to read all thousands and tens of thousands of pieces of paper. But we really need to know before.
Do it for your country.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And then, the last thing on this, maybe not the last thing, but the next thing on the SCOTUS thing is the importance of how this transfers the responsibility from the high court down to the state legislatures, to state governors. In today's Cincinnati Enquirer, Jennifer Branch has an excellent a column talking about what would happen if we reversed Roe. How there's approximately 20,000 abortions in Ohio every year. This would not stop all the abortions. It would just stop the safe ones. So she says, here I'm reading, pre-Roe, hospital had wards for women injured from unsafe abortions. Will such wards be reopened? Where? Not in our religious-based hospitals, and probably not in our public hospitals. Ohio's already banned public hospitals from agreeing to accept emergency patients from abortion providers in the rare case when a patient needs hospital care. Will the legislators extend that ban to prohibit public hospitals from treating women injured or dying from an illegal abortion? I mean, these are really ugly outcomes that we're looking at. And as our boss, Kelly Copeland, has said, this used to be like a hypothetical conversation. Nothing is hypothetical anymore. This is a real question that state legislators, candidates for governor, need to answer.
Yeah. Well, when we saw a test case of it when House Bill 2 passed in Texas and every clinic in the Rio Grande Valley closed. So for geographically challenged individuals, the Rio Grande Valley of Texas is that peninsula of Texas. It's actually south of a lot of Mexico.
Okay.
So it was way easier for a woman to cross over into Mexico, go to a local flea market and get an abortion pill. And in some cases that was actually mifepristone, RU486, and the real drugs. And in some cases it was not. It was some other folk remedy or whatever. And several of the clinics that had closed and were no longer performing abortion services in that area stayed open like a day a week or something like that to treat women who had partially miscarried because they had taken some not fully strengthed or not appropriate abortion pill that they had gotten from Mexico. So, I mean, we saw this. It's not even a hypothetical, even in the modern world, that, you need some sort of hospital ward or some kind of medical place for people to go when they do access a medication that doesn't work the way that it should because it wasn't, medically supervised and wasn't the proper medication. So, even though we're probably not looking at a world where, we're looking at wire coat hangers, we're looking at people getting drugs off the internet, in our more modern society, but we're still going to have these same situations where women are going to need follow-up medical care because something has gone wrong, and who will be there for that.
Right.
Exactly.
We actually had a story we brought forward, I think, when Tom Brinkman did his first abortion ban, a story from a man who was living in Cleveland at the time and was living in Cleveland pre-Roe. And he and his wife lived in some tenement house apartment building in Cleveland somewhere, and at like 2:00 one morning, his neighbor like was pounding on his door, and he opened the door, and she like collapsed into his arms, and she had an illegal abortion and was going septic. She had gotten an infection and was going septic. And so he went to, I think, at least 2, if not 3 different emergency rooms in the Cleveland area trying to find somebody to treat her, and they all turned her away. Oh, it was the last one who finally says, we can't help her here, but if you go here, they will help you. And he got her the care, and she got the care she needed, and she survived, and everything was okay. But I mean, that's the scenario that Jennifer Branch is asking about there. Like, who will be there to treat these people?
Right.
Who will be there to help?
Yeah. I mean, we hear so many people reference the Hippocratic Oath when we have hearings on abortion bans and doctors' views on this. And the idea that either doctors themselves would refuse to assist, or that hospitals would put in place policies to tie doctors' hands and not let them assist, is shocking and disgusting.
Yeah. And to add to that, to the topic we talked about last week too, the Ohio State Medical Association endorsed Mike DeWine, a person who said he would sign a bill that could cause a Supreme Court with Kavanaugh on it to gut or overturn Roe.
Right.
So, here you have a medical establishment, medical organization that's supposed to represent these doctors who are going to have their hands tied and are going to be forced to go to prison, and is now just saying, we don't really care about that.
I don't see how this is not like just scaring everybody to do something, like literally.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Just to think about it, I had a friend who had a tubular pregnancy, just to think things happen that's out of your control, out of your hands. So you have to have the proper care. You have to have a doctor who's able to do, what they need to do for you. And if we're trying to criminalize doctors for that, I mean,
I think so many people don't think it would ever happen to them. It's kind of the same thing with rape. Well, I would never have walked down that dark street corner in that mini skirt. Those clothes. Well, exactly. Amazing how we went to the same place. But it's the same. Like, well, I would never experience unintended pregnancy, so I wouldn't need an abortion. Well, do you ever plan to be pregnant? Because you could have a tubal pregnancy. Yes. You could experience, major issues with your pregnancy, or you could have a fetus with a fatal anomaly. Yeah. And that's what, I think a lot of medical professionals also like, well, I'm not an abortion provider, so I won't go to jail. Well, are you an OB who would treat a woman with a tubal pregnancy? Because that would be an abortion.
Exactly.
Like, it really does impact so many more people than this other person that I'm never going to be because I'm better than that. Yeah. I think that's a lot of it, and people just don't understand. And I think it's been, like Gabe said, Kelly keeps talking about how it's been this hypothetical. It's been a hypothetical for so long. Right. We've said, Roe versus the Planned Parenthood versus Casey decision in the 90s. All the lawyers were all really scared about how that could gut Roe and essentially end abortion access. And it didn't make it better, but it didn't make it as bad as that. It certainly wasn't the best case decision ever, but it was also not the worst. So, we've kind of been playing in this hypothetical sphere for so long that I think there's a lot of people out there like, well, you've been crying wolf for a while.
Yeah, but now it's more realistic. Now we actually have that, person who can actually put this into place. Yeah. So this is not a drill.
Mm-hmm. Yes. This is no longer crying wolf. The wolf is actually there, and he's staring us down in the face. And his name is Brett Kavanaugh. So we've talked about a lot of times on how his name just doesn't sound like a SCOTUS name.
On the topic of doctors assisting, the role of courts to decide whether or not a medical professional has the right to refuse to help. We have some real world cases that have been in the news this summer that really accurately illustrate what happens when somebody turns to a medical professional, in some cases a doctor, but in these two cases, pharmacies, which, are part of the medical community, and pharmacists refuse to serve. So the first one here, the most recent one we'll start with at CVS in Arizona, Hildy. Hildy Hall went straight from a doctor's office to a CVS pharmacy, eager to fill her first hormone therapy prescription. Hildy Hall is a transgender woman, and so was beginning hormone therapy. And the pharmacist turned her away, said no. So, here you have somebody who's supposed to be assisting people, filling prescriptions, providing, medication that's been ordered by a doctor.
Exactly. Valid prescription.
And the pharmacist, I don't want to do this.
I'm going to make this decision for you now.
Yeah. I'm assuming they claimed a religious grounds for their, or did they just say no? Do you know?
This article doesn't say.
Okay. Because usually it's that.
Yeah. So, it's a question of was this in line with the corporate policies or not? But then when this happens, to the person who's going up to the pharmacy and expecting to be able to receive the medication that they need, if it's a corporate policy, if it's an individual pharmacist, if it was the doctor, that doesn't matter to the person. Right. A refusal is a refusal.
Exactly.
And that's the same idea that applies to a lot of the abortion restrictions is, we get asked all the time, what's the most extreme abortion ban? I'm like, well, the most extreme one for that individual patient is whichever the one is that turns them away.
Yeah.
And so for this to happen to this individual and to be denied care at essentially the last step in the process,
especially with all of the stuff she would have had to go through to get to that point.
Exactly.
Like that should be, it's kind of the first day of her new life living in the body that she was supposed to be born in. And this is kind of that like first official big step into that. Yeah. And to have somebody just be like, nope, I can control that. You get to stay in that body that you don't think is the right body for you. The mental anguish that goes along with that too is just, it's not just, oh, sorry, you can't get your, antibiotic. Like this is a drug that will help turn her body into the body that she was supposed to be born in. And this person says, oh, wait, no, you get to stay trapped in the jail of the body that you were born into.
Right. Because
I don't think you should have this drug.
Right. And the medical community should be looking at that in terms of, if this was anything else, if this was antibiotics, if your kid gets, get something and they need penicillin, if I'm going to pick up insulin, it's the next day in that person's life with that medical treatment that they need. And this should not be treated any differently. Yeah. And the idea that a pharmacist would get to inject their own
personal beliefs into
no
that.
Pun intended with inject there, but but the personal beliefs of the pharmacist should not be, be something that's permitted.
Yeah,
and
not at all. And that should be in corporate policy. Like you don't get to choose someone else's life based on your personal religious beliefs, etc. So personally, I don't even feel like that pharmacist should still have a job.
Apparently they don't. So that's
some good news on that one.
But this happens all the time. Second case, June 26th, Walgreens pharmacist refuses to fill a woman's prescription to induce a miscarriage. So she'd been told by a doctor that her 9-week-old fetus had stopped developing, and essentially, this was a failed pregnancy.
Yes, right. Pregnancy was over at that point.
Absolutely.
But she was not passing the tissue. Yeah.
And was told no.
So essentially you're harming my body even more.
Yeah.
Like that's crazy.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I'm remembering that one right, in that Walgreens case of that second one, Walgreens actually said that it was their policy and he followed their policy and that pharmacist was not fired.
And Walgreens is canceled.
Yeah.
They've walked that back.
They have walked that back. They did initially. Initially, that's what they said. They did eventually walk that one back.
But these are things that happen all the time. Yeah. And so when these hit the courts, we need judges who understand the value of
absolutely,
someone's bodily autonomy.
Yeah. Well, and this is where the whole religious freedom argument comes back in as well. Absolutely. Like, at least the Walgreens case was I don't believe in abortion because of religious reasons, so I can't, help you have one. And so, when you look at Kavanaugh and he's saying, well, that should be that person's right to exercise their religion. Well, when your religion impacts my life, that's no longer your religious freedom. That's religious oppression that you're putting on me.
Absolutely.
So, looking at Kavanaugh's record on that, I mean, it definitely is a very serious issue that, he would most likely not rule to protect access to those medications for those people.
Right.
And what's next? I mean, what is the slippery slope here? Oh, you talk about insulin. A person that is more overweight than the pharmacist thinks they should be coming in for insulin or a diabetes prescription. Oh, well, you did that to yourself, so I don't think that you should have this drug.
Right.
Where is the what's next there?
Exactly.
I mean, if somebody,
when do they stop? When is there a breaking point? When do we say enough is enough?
Mm-hmm. And if you worked at McDonald's and you were a vegetarian and you started refusing to hand out hamburgers, McDonald's would fire your butt on the spot. That this is the same thing.
Absolutely.
Do your job. If you want to have this job, you should do that job.
And if your personal beliefs are going to interfere with how you do your job, find a different job.
Yeah.
Don't interfere with someone else's health because of your beliefs. Yeah. I don't understand how that is so hard for people to understand. That's the scary part about it.
Mm-hmm. It really is.
Yes. Mini size.
All of the size and eye rolls.
Okay, so that's all things to be considered with Supreme Court nominee questions that we'd like to see Brett Kavanaugh asked. A majority of Americans were polled and responded that they would like to see a Supreme Court nominee answer questions on abortion. There's this myth that Republicans have created that no, they don't need to answer the questions. And there's a video of Ruth Bader Ginsburg clearly making a statement for the U.S. Senate, answering the question. Kavanaugh should answer also.
Yes, absolutely.
And questions of personal responsibility. Is the president above the law? These sorts of things we definitely want to hear. Between now and then, though, in Ohio, we've got a big race.
A special election. Yay!
For the Ohio 12th.
That's my district. Yeah. I don't think it's anybody else's. It's not yours. You've got Joyce Beatty, don't you?
Yes.
Too?
Yes.
You guys are both all lucky with your Joyce Beatties.
Yes, we are.
I missed that district by a block and a half. I think I've said that about 500 times on this podcast. Yeah, so Danny O'Connor is running in a special election. It's kind of a weird election because in the primary in May, we voted for Danny O'Connor twice because you had to vote for him in the primary for the special and for the general election in November. So these people will be on the ballot both now and again in November. But Danny O'Connor is the Democrat running against Troy Balderson, who is the Republican. Weirdly, he was the least crazy Republican, but he still...
Is there such a thing?
In that race, there was, because the person he was against was... Oh boy.
Way worse.
We've talked a lot about Christina Hagan on this podcast. I think she and Christina Hagan would have been BFFs. Okay. Very, very crazy conservative woman. All of her ads were in her McMansion neighborhood in Powell, about whatever. But she didn't win. Yes. Troy Balderson did, and he, is a BFF with Trump. Therefore, BFF with Putin, I guess, right? And believes in not restricting access to guns and not protecting our kids in schools. Definitely doesn't believe in the right to abortion and gay rights and all of these things. Bad. So Danny O'Connor's fabulous and wonderful. And actually, it's really hilarious. His campaign office is at the end of my street. Every time I leave my neighborhood, I see the Danny O'Connor for Congress office. So it's just a little bit of Franklin County, actually. And then a big chunk of Delaware and I think Union County and some other of the suburban areas. It's Pat T-Berry's old seat. But he decided that he didn't feel like being a government employee anymore based on how salty he was on a Southwest flight with me from DC. I can understand maybe why. And so, it'll be August 7th is the special election. Early vote has already started. So the early vote center is open in Franklin County. That is the one on Morris Road. That is the usual spot where early vote happens. And yeah, what was really interesting about that race this week too was there was a letter to the editor in the Dispatch talking about how Danny O'Connor talks about his faith, but is also endorsed by NARAL and Planned Parenthood, and how those two things can't happen together. I wondered if that was going to be an audible sigh. I saw the eye roll happen. I waited for it. Good job. Thank you. But yeah, so there's a whole letter to the editor about how you can't be a religious person and be pro-choice. And if Elena was on with us today, she would probably be going off about that. But yeah, so he is most definitely a person of faith, but is definitely, fully endorsed by NARAL and Planned Parenthood, because he, as a person of faith, believes that people should have the right to their bodily autonomy and right to the healthcare services they need. I mean, one of his big platform pieces is actually about how his mom got breast cancer when he was in college, and how she had world-class care because she had really good insurance. And as they went through that process, he realized how many other people didn't have access to the type of care that he and his mom got, and are no longer here because they don't have that. So he really has a very good personal story on why he's so invested in these things too. So go Danny O'Connor. Yay. If you're in the 12th congressional district, and you can go to house.gov and figure that out, you really, 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 really need to get out and vote on August 7th or before it. Early vote for Danny O'Connor, and we'll put a link to finding your district online. It's a part of Clintonville. It's some of Westerville, but not all of Westerville, as we figured out. I think a little bit of Dublin and Worthington too. So it's this little, I call it the Harry Potter scar into into central Franklin County, and then a bunch of the suburbs of northern Franklin County. So,
gerrymandering is real.
I'm the point on that Harry Potter scar. That is my.
Okay.
So yeah.
Very important election.
It is, because it will really show that, we can get out and win in these gerrymandered districts. This district is, I think 40% Democratic, 43% Democratic.
Right.
So.
And the person he's running against, Troy Balderson, is a state senator who's supported, essentially all the usual suspect legislation. He's got a terrible anti-choice voting record. He's got an F, 0% or whatever. Should not be in Congress.
Yes, definitely does not deserve a promotion in any way, shape, or form. No.
Vote for O'Connor. Okay, so then let's move on to events. What's upcoming? This weekend is Youngstown Pride. Our Northern Ohio organizer, Hannah, is going to be up there. If you see her, say hello. July 23rd, that's Monday, in Toledo. There's a rapid response meeting. It's a joint sort of training workshop. NARAL Pro-Choice Ohio, again, that's Hannah, along with Planned Parenthood and a couple other friendly organizations. I'm not looking, but I'm guessing Urge. Probably.
Yeah,
the people in Toledo have been doing amazing work. So if you want to join them, there's a great meeting that new people would be welcome to come.
Be a great time for a new person to.
July 26th is the Repro Health Happy Hour here in Columbus at Growl.
Yes.
So that's our standard monthly get together. And then those are
benefiting Root this time too, so everyone should go.
Restoring our own through transformation. Providing prenatal, postnatal, doula care for Black women. So definitely a terrific organization. And then there's a bunch of other things falling in. So you can always find all of our event info on the events tab on our Facebook page.
Yes.
Okay.
Woohoo.
All right. I think that's it for this week. So
Yay.
we will see everybody next week.
Bye.